passes. He's such a great passer.
6 straight, they lead by 2. 56 Mavericks over the Clippers at halftime.
Very entertaining.
A bounce? I think so.
We're going to get a ruling on that at halftime from Dan.
The Dallas Mavericks could be in the process of making a very, very big mistake, and I'm not sure that they're probably even aware of the mistake they're making. Now, this mistake isn't going to really bite them in the butt anytime soon, but about 2 to 3 years down the line, it could result in them losing practically everything, and everything being obviously Luka Doncic. And the reason I say that is because we just kind of seen this exact situation play out with the New Orleans Pelicans and Anthony Davis. Now, I'm not saying that the Dallas Mavericks in any way are going to lose Luka. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're not going to put together a very good team around him. And I'm not going to say that they're not going to be able to make this mistake into a right just a few years down the line. I'm not saying anything like that, but I'm just saying that it looks like this situation is kind of on the same trajectory as the Anthony Davis situation. Because if you really think about it, the entire reason Anthony Davis wanted out of New Orleans wasn't even because they weren't that big of a market. Yes, that did have part to do with it, but it was also because they just were never winning despite him playing like an absolute beast in the MVP level and him not getting the credit he deserves because he is on a losing small market team. And that is exactly what is kind of happening with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, they have seen more success as far as making it to the playoffs and everything, but if you have a guy like Luka Doncic on your roster, you're not trying to make the playoffs, you're trying to win the NBA Finals. That is how good Luka is, and I'm sure Luka has that same mindset, especially when a guy like Luka is looking at his individual performance, and it literally cannot be any better. As I mean, Luka's had probably one of the best starts to a career of all time. He's been in the league for 4 full years, and in those 4 full seasons, he has won Rookie of the Year, he's became a 3-time All-Star, he's made the All-NBA First Team 2 times, and I'm pretty sure he's made the playoffs almost every year since joining the league as well, and now he's already in MVP conversations, and the dude is only 23 years old. And then if you look at the beginning of this year, Luka's off to once again a historic start in the NBA, as this year he is currently averaging 33 points per game, which has him ranked as the first best player in points per game. There is no one scoring more points than Luka right now. He is at 8.6 rebounds per game, which is once again first among all point guards in the entire NBA. He's 8.6 assists per game, which is third among point guards, and 50% shooting from the field, which is third among point guards. And then even if you look at his steals per game at 1.9 steals per game, that is second among all point guards in the NBA. So you would be hard pressed to find anyone that is having a better season than Luka Doncic currently is. And with this good of a start, you would imagine the Dallas Mavericks are probably one of the best teams in the NBA, but you would be sorely mistaken, as the Dallas Mavericks currently sit at an 11-11 record at the 10th seed in the Western Conference. And that is just unacceptable when you have a guy like Luka who is playing really above an MVP level at this point. He is literally a top 5 player in the NBA. When you are 11-11 and he is playing like this, that is just unacceptable. And it's not like they have a bad roster around him, and I do expect the Dallas Mavericks to probably finish as a top 6 seed in the Western Conference when things are all said and done, but top 6 is really almost just as unacceptable when you have a guy that is as good as Luka. And really, the roster is not a bad roster around him, like I said earlier, and it's not from a lack of trying. They have added guys like Kristaps Porzingis, but it just didn't work out because Porzingis, all being probably the closest thing to another star he's ever played with, barely ever played. He only played over 50 games in a season with them one time, and they did not play together very much at all, and he just struggled to stay healthy in his tenure with the Dallas Mavericks, and that is by far the closest thing Luka has ever had to a star-level teammate. The closest thing after that is probably, Jalen Brunson, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Christian Wood, and although those 3 players are very good at what they do, none of them are good enough to be a second-best player on a championship-level team, maybe even debatably not even good enough to be a third-best player on an NBA championship team. So, for sure, the Dallas Mavericks, although they have tried to get Luka help, they have struggled to get the stars around him, and like I said earlier, that is very, very similar to what we saw with the New Orleans Pelicans and Anthony Davis. The Pelicans tried to put stars around him. They had Drew Holiday on the roster, they traded for DeMarcus Cousins, they signed Rajon Rondo, and those teams were very, very solid, and they weren't bad at all, but they just weren't good enough to ever contend, and they couldn't consistently keep that roster roster around him, a lot like the Dallas Mavericks are currently doing, and it then resulted in Anthony Davis demanding a trade. Now, yes, that situation did ultimately work out for the Pelicans, and they're now probably in a better place than they ever would have been with Anthony Davis, but that is a very, very rare situation where trading a top 10 player in the NBA actually works out for the team. So I'm not 100% sure that the Dallas Mavericks would be as lucky as the New Orleans Pelicans have been since trading Anthony Davis away. So I do think that Dallas does need to start getting their stuff together, and they need to very quickly try to build a championship contending roster around Luka. And I think that they have the framework. They just have to get a little bit more willing to trade their draft picks, trade their young guys, trade some role players to get the star talent into that roster, because without at least a second star, this team cannot win a championship. Luka's a beast and can get you to the second round of the playoffs by himself, but he cannot win you a championship by himself. He is not God, okay? Like, he has his own limits, and I mean, you have to get someone, and Kristaps was a good thought, and in theory it should have worked, but the injuries really derailed that. So they have to find a way to either get one in free agency, trade for a star, maybe like a Bradley Beal in trade deadline, or someone like that at the trade deadline to make this roster a legit contender, or Luka's going to start to want to look somewhere else to where he can legitimately win at a high level. Because I don't think someone like Luka cares about a big market, small market. He probably only cares about winning, and right now, Luka cannot do that at the highest level with the current Dallas Mavericks roster that they have constructed. So am I really saying that I think he is going to end up like Anthony Davis and demanding a trade? I don't. I do have faith that Dallas will be able to get their stuff together, and they will be able to put a contending level team around Luka, but there is still that slight possibility that it just never works out. Like, the Pelicans made good moves in theory. DeMarcus Cousins gets hurt, Rajon Rondo got old and wanted to leave, Jrue Holiday demanded a trade after Anthony Davis left, but Jrue Holiday just wasn't good enough to be a second best player on a championship contending team, and well, it blew up in the Pelicans' face after about 8 years. So unless Luka, they can build a championship contending team around him in the next 3 seasons, they could be looking at a very, very similar situation, and they might be losing one of the best young players to ever come through the NBA in NBA history, and that would be a very dire situation, because although Anthony Davis is a great player, he's probably never been as impactful or good as Luka Doncic is going to be or currently is, honestly. And I know Anthony Davis is playing very good, but that's just a testament to how good Luka is. So that would even probably hurt worse to lose Luka than it did for the Pelicans to lose Anthony Davis. So I think that the Dallas Mavericks really need to get themselves in gear and start building this team around Luka, or they could be looking at the worst possible outcome going into the future. But unfortunately, guys, that's more for this video. So comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think Luka might demand a trade in the future? Do you think they're going to be able to build a contending team around him? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like the video, hit like button and subscribe button. It means the absolute word to me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I have a blessed day. So you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.